The food is already on the table, but nobody has started eating yet. A few hands are folded, someone closes their eyes, the pause is familiar. One person at the table no longer believes. They're not angry, they're not trying to protest or make the evening about themselves. They simply do not bow their head. For a few seconds, nothing obvious happens. Then the mood changes. Their sister glances at them, their brother looks disappointed, their mother asks, "Can't you just do it for us?" Their father adds, "It's about respect." That is the moment this episode is about. The prayer may be private in one sense. Each person may understand it as their own act of faith, gratitude, comfort, tradition, or connection. But the person who does not participate quickly learns that the ritual is not only private, it has a public expectation around it. The question is no longer only, "Do you believe this?" The question becomes, "Will you perform agreement so the group can remain emotionally settled?" That is easy to miss because the expectation usually arrives in soft language. Nobody says, "You must accept our whole view of reality." They say, "Be respectful. This matters to your mother." Or, "It's only a few seconds. Why do you have to make it difficult?" Each sentence points in the same direction. A belief that comforts one person has become something others are expected to protect. The belief may not begin as a social demand. A prayer before food may help someone feel grateful, grounded, watched over, connected to family. For the people inside the belief, the ritual may feel warm and ordinary. It may feel like home. For the person outside it, the same ritual can carry a different meaning. It becomes a forced test of belonging. The person is being asked to help maintain a shared emotional world they no longer believe in. This is the central distinction. Private consolation is something a person uses to carry life. Public expectation begins when other people are expected to participate in that consolation, protect it, or stay silent around it. The difficult part is that social life often protects beliefs before anyone notices protection becoming pressure. At first, the protection may be understandable. Someone is grieving, someone is afraid, trying to get through the moment. In those moments, care usually comes before examination. Fresh pain often calls for tact. A person in such pain may need food, quiet, help with ordinary tasks, or someone who does not try to correct them at the worst possible moment. There are times when disagreement can be true and still badly timed. The same protection can outlive the fragile moment. A year passes, 5 years go by. The immediate wound is no longer the reason silence is expected. Now the belief is protected because it has become part of family identity, tradition, moral order, or the emotional piece of the group. The reason has changed. It begins as, "Please do not challenge this while I'm still trying to get through it." Later it becomes, "Please do not challenge this because challenging it means you do not respect us." A belief begins as a way to carry pain. Then it becomes a part of a shared script. The script becomes a sign of respect. Refusal becomes disrespect. And at the end of that chain, a person may be asked to perform belief, not because they are convinced, but because the group has learned to treat participation as proof of care. The belief does not need to win an argument, it only needs to become attached to emotional safety. Once that happens, disagreement can be read as harm, silence can be read as respect, participation can become care, and refusal turns into rejection. People learn that pattern. They learn which sentences receive nods, which ones create tension, and which ones make them look insensitive. They learn when to soften their words, when to leave their doubt outside. They learn that some beliefs do not need to persuade the group because the group has already learned to protect them. This pattern is not limited to religion, but religion makes it especially visible because religious belief often carries several layers at once. It can be comfort, identity, family history, moral order, and a promise about what happens after death. When one belief carries that much, questioning the belief rarely feels like questioning only a belief. If someone says God has a plan and another person asks, how do we know that? The question may be logically fair. Socially, it lands somewhere else. It may sound like an attack on their pain, like disrespect toward the family, or it may sound like coldness. The issue is not only what the question means, the issue is what the situation makes the question do. Some beliefs are protected because the timing is wrong. Other beliefs are protected because the group has decided without saying it directly that certain claims sit above ordinary questioning. The first case is tact. The situation leaves little room for debate. It calls for care before correction. The second case is authority. The belief has become insulated from disagreement because disagreement threatens identity, peace, or belonging. Tact applies to a situation. Authority applies across situations. A person may say, this is not the time. That can be fair, but if there is never a time, something else is happening. The protection has moved from bad timing to examination itself. This is where comfort becomes public expectation. A belief first survives because people are careful around pain. Then it keeps surviving because challenging it has become socially expensive. Eventually, people stop asking whether the belief is true, useful, or appropriate in the moment. The social cost of questioning becomes the main fact in the room. That gives the belief a strong form of protection. The protection becomes stronger through moral language. The person who questions the belief is not simply described as unconvinced. They're usually described as disrespectful, arrogant, bitter, corrupted, insensitive, or hostile. The disagreement now moves from the level of belief to the level of character, and this move changes the cost of speaking. If I disagree with your belief, you can answer me. If my disagreement is treated as a sign of poor character, then the conversation is no longer about the belief. It is about how my character is being interpreted. This is one of the strongest ways comfort becomes expectation. The person outside the belief is asked to show respect by leaving it unexamined. That can make sense in a fragile moment. It changes function when generalized. Let's take another look at the dinner scene. A person at the table no longer believes. They're not trying to convert anyone, they're not mocking anyone, they simply do not join the prayer before eating, and the table reacts negatively. Now the object has changed. The prayer is not only an expression of belief, it has become a test of belonging. The person is not being asked, do you believe this? They are being asked, will you perform agreement so the group can remain emotionally settled? That is public expectation. The pressure may look small from the outside. Just bow your head, say the words, come to the service. Just let the children hear it. Do not make it awkward. Each request can sound minor. Together, they create a social environment where one belief gets to occupy the center, and everyone outside the belief must move carefully around it. The belief becomes part of the furniture of the room. People who share it barely notice the pressure because the room already fits them. The language feels natural, the ritual feels normal, the assumptions feel familiar. For the person outside it, every moment carries a small calculation. How honest can I be without becoming the problem? This calculation is often invisible to believers because comfort can hide its own authority. When a belief feels loving, stabilizing, and morally good, it can be hard to notice when it is also making demands. The believer experiences the request as care. The outsider experiences it as pressure. Both experiences are real. A parent may genuinely believe that religious language protects the family. A child who no longer believes may genuinely experience that language as a condition of acceptance. One person may genuinely need a sacred sentence to steady themselves. Someone else may feel their own position disappearing from the room when they are pressured to act in ways they do not believe. The point I'm trying to make is that comfort can be real and still have a boundary. A belief may steady one person without becoming an obligation for everyone nearby. The harder part is that social life often runs on these small protections. We do not challenge every sentence we disagree with, correct every person at every moment, or demand philosophical precision from someone who is trying to remain intact. Human beings need tact. They need rooms where not everything is up for debate at the worst possible time. However, tact still has a boundary. There is a difference between saying, I will not challenge this sentence while you are hurting, and saying, this sentence must now control our shared space. But without that boundary, comfort can keep expanding into shared space. Pain can give a belief authority. Need can become expectation. The room learns to protect a belief not only from bad timing, but from ordinary disagreement. The useful distinction here is between presence and participation. Presence says, I can sit with you in your pain. Participation says, I must enter your interpretation of that pain. Those are different acts. A person can support their religious family member without pretending to share their belief. They can sit quietly during a prayer without performing in their agreement, or attend a ceremony without accepting the theology behind it. They can refuse a ritual without refusing love. That last distinction is often the hardest one for groups to accept. The refusal to perform belief is not automatically a refusal of care. A person may decline to pray because they do not want to lie. They may stay quiet because silence is the most honest form of respect they can offer. They may refuse to say the words precisely because they do not believe in the words. Groups often treat shared language as proof of love. If you say the words, you belong. If you bow your head, you respect us. This can make honesty appear hostile. The person who refuses the performance becomes the disturbance, even when the original pressure came from the expectation itself. They are accused of making things awkward, even though the awkwardness came from requiring agreement in the first place. When a belief has public authority, the person who does not perform it is treated as the one introducing tension. The group rarely notices that the tension was already there. It was sitting inside the expectation. The non participant only made it visible. This is why public expectation can feel so one sided from the outside. The believer experiences continuity, the outsider experiences pressure. When the outsider refuses, the believer experiences disruption. Then the outsider gets blamed for disturbing a peace that depended on their silence. The expectation protects itself by making refusal look like the source of the tension. That is one reason an expectation can become difficult to resist. It does not need formal punishment. It only needs facial expressions, disappointment, words like respect, and the possibility of being seen as inconsiderate. It works through small social costs: a pause before dinner, a look across the table, a comment afterward, a parent who becomes quiet, or a sibling who says, you know how much this means to mom. The mechanism lives in ordinary moments. A belief becomes socially powerful when people who do not share it still feel responsible for keeping it comfortable. That responsibility is not always wrong. In close relationships, we often handle each other's fragile places with care. But care becomes pressure when one person's fragile place requires another person's repeated suppression of their own position, long after the period of care has passed. The line is not always clean. A person may choose to bow their head out of love. Another person may choose not to. The act itself does not tell the whole story. The question is whether the choice is still real. Can the person decline without being treated as disrespectful? Can they stay silent without being treated as hostile? Can they be present without performing agreement? Can the group tolerate care that does not look like conformity? These questions reveal whether a belief is functioning as private comfort or public expectation. In plural spaces, This becomes even more important. People carry different beliefs, different losses, different moral histories, and different ways of making sense of suffering. One person's sacred comfort may be another person's falsehood. A room that protects only one form of consolation can silence other forms of grief, doubt, and honesty. The deeper issue is what happens when emotional usefulness becomes social authority. A belief helps someone, the group protects it. Protection becomes politeness. Politeness becomes expectation. Expectation becomes a test of respect. At the end of the chain, person may be asked to affirm something they do not believe because someone else once needed it to survive. That chain does not make the original comfort wrong. It shows how comforting travel. The same sentence can be mercy in one moment and pressure in another. A prayer can be grounding for one person and pressuring for another. A ritual can feel like home to those inside it and like a loyalty test to those outside it. So the question is not whether people should be allowed to hold comforting beliefs. Of course they should. The more precise question is, when does another person's comfort become a rule for the room? Once we can see that shift, we can handle the situation with more care. We do not have to take comfort away from people in pain. We also do not have to let pain convert every comforting belief into authority. So, for this episode, I want to leave you with this question: how do we care for someone's pain without letting their comfort decide what everyone else is allowed to say?